What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Neon Spotlight. This is the segment on my channel where I go back through the Neon production company's entire filmography from the first film they produced all the way until whenever I get caught up. And I have been having a ton of fun doing this recently. As I stated, I wanted to do this because, similar to the A24 archive, I've been really impressed with Neon and the quality of films they've put out recently, and so I wanted to go back through, especially early on, see what kind of films that they picked up and produced early as a production company. And I was really surprised because I have seen this movie before, but did not realize it was produced by Neon, or just didn't realize it at the time. In this movie, I'm very excited to go back and rewatch it because the director, Coralie Fargeat, actually directed the movie The Substance this year, which I absolutely adored. I thought it was an incredible movie. And so I'd already seen this movie and I really enjoyed it the first time around. I liked it quite a bit, but it had been a couple years since I watched it, so I was looking forward to revisiting it. And the movie I'm going to be talking about with you today is Revenge. Revenge is directed by Coralie Fargeat. Jen's romantic getaway with her wealthy married boyfriend is disrupted when his friends arrive for an impromptu hunting trip. Tensions mount at the house until a situation culminates in an unexpected way. So I was really excited to watch this movie again. I'd already seen it once and really enjoyed it. And to be honest with you, I liked it even more this time around. I thought this movie was incredible, and it really just goes to show what a fantastic director that Coralie is. Not just like the performances that she gets from her actors, but the cinematography and the production design and the score and just everything that contributes to making it such an immersive and visceral experience. Because this movie, it's incredibly traumatic and it's horrifying, and it depicts some really awful things on screen. And to talk about this movie as a whole, it's really difficult to not get into spoiler territory. So I'm going to discuss the movie pretty openly. It's been out for a few years now. So if you want to see this completely blind, I probably won't give away where it goes in the end, but like the initial inciting incident I'm going to discuss. So if you want to go in completely blind, go watch it. Just know that I really enjoy this movie a lot, and there's a lot to love about it, and I'm excited to tell you about it today. So at the beginning of the movie, we are introduced to Jen, played by Matilda Lutz, and she gets off a helicopter with Richard, played by Kevin Janssens, and the two of them are on this getaway together, and wherever they're flying to, it's like in the middle of nowhere. It's essentially in a desert, and there's a really nice house in the middle of there, and the only way in and out is through this helicopter. And they get there together. We see they're very flirtatious back and forth. They have sex really early on. We learn Richard's true colors right away when we hear him go in the other room and call his wife to check on his kids, and he lies to them about being on a business trip and all this. And Jen is just thrilled to be in this really nice house. She's super excited. And early on, there's a knock on the door, and these two men show up, and they are the friends of Richard, and they're out doing this hunting, and they all end up spending an evening together where they drink and party and hang out. And Jen is like dancing with some of the guys, and they're all having a good, seemingly normal, good time together. But it's really clear early on that the two men that showed up are relatively creepy. They seem to be like fawning over her in kind of an uncomfortable way, and Richard just seems completely and utterly oblivious to it. And the next day, Richard has to get on the helicopter and fly to do something, which leaves Jen at the house with these two men. And one of the men approaches her, starts having a conversation, and coming on to her very strongly. And she essentially says, "I'm not interested in you." And she tries to kind of pass it off in the most polite way possible. And the man gets incredibly upset, and he ends up raping her. And the other man sees that it's occurring, and he completely and totally ignores it. And Richard gets back on his helicopter, and he learns what has happened, and she says, "I want to leave now. I want to go back home. I don't want to be here anymore. I've been violated. My humanity's been stripped from me. Get me out of here." And he says, "Oh, you're overreacting." And she says, "No, I'll tell your wife." And he smacks her in the face. And she gets up and she ends up fleeing the house. And when she gets outside, Richard and the two men confront her and say, "Oh, it's nothing to worry about. Like, don't worry. You know, you can call the helicopter. We'll get you out of here right away." And so she buys into it at first until Richard pushes her off of a cliff near the house. And he pushes her off of the cliff, and she ends up hitting on a tree, and it impales her partially, but she manages to survive. And the entirety of the film is Jen fighting for survival in the middle of this desert against these three men with whatever she can utilize around her to attempt to fight these guys off and escape with her life. So, like I said, I love this movie. I think it is phenomenal from top to bottom. And I'm going to start with the performances. I really like Matilda Lutz. I talked about her performance a few months ago in the film Magpie. I think she's a really talented actress, and I like her character a lot in this movie because it's very clear what Coralie is trying to do with this movie, where like she really does a great job early on kind of overblowing the male gaze, just the way the camera looks at her and kind of just sees her as this object. But as the movie goes on, we learn more about her intellect and her survival skills and what she is capable of as a human being. And slowly the way the camera portrays her just gets it just changes and shifts as the movie goes on. And I love that about the movie. And I think so much about how this subject matter pays off is through Matilda Lutz's incredible performance. She really just gives it her all. And she has a lot of scenes that she has to be completely and totally fearless. And I think she nails it brilliantly. The three men in this movie do a phenomenal job as well, playing really slimy, gross, disgusting human beings. And what I really like is when they're doing something gross off screen, a lot of times Coralie will utilize the cinematography to parallel with some other imagery that's complementing the themes that the movie's trying to explore. And it's not necessarily nuanced by any means, very similar to The Substance. It's really on the nose, but it's important subject matter that should be discussed. And I think making it so on the nose kind of just complements the very chaotic and in your face tone of the movie, which is what makes it so engaging and entertaining in the first place. The cinematography in this is phenomenal. Not only do I love just the framing of certain shots in this movie, but I really like the use of color. There's a lot of great color usage in this movie and really attentive detail in what is shot very widely and what's shot close up to create a really unique atmosphere, because this movie takes place in the middle of nowhere and she utilizes the cinematography to keep reiterating that to you of like how difficult it is to fight for your survival, and really the only way you're going to get out of this situation is to kill these people. There's honestly no way around it. And I think utilizing the cinematography in that way makes the movie a very engaging experience. I also love the score to this film. It's very synth heavy. It really keeps you on the edge of your seat, and it's utilized in the perfect moments along with some really visceral sound design. There's some like really gnarly practical effects in this, and the sound, like especially like there's people picking through like wounds and stuff, and it's real like gross, kind of like squishy sounding, and it just makes you feel sick while you're watching it. And it translates really well into The Substance. Going back and watching this, it just goes to show that Coralie's taking what she's really good at and just getting better with it. And this movie, like all of those pieces, create a really fantastic viewing experience. And what I like about this movie is it's obviously a rape revenge film. But what I like about it is when the initial assault is showcased on screen, it's done in a way that like showcases the horrific nature of the situation without taking it too far. I feel like, you know, there's a way to depict violence like that on screen that works. And I think like the way Coralie showcases it, we get it mostly through the perspective of Jen's character, which is all the more horrifying, seeing just her facial expressions and then the other character's reaction to it, the man who's just witnessing it, kind of turning on a TV and upping the volume so that he can ignore it. And I think that's so prevalent, especially like when we look back at the Me Too movement, so many women speaking out about being assaulted, and just like how the rest of the world tries to tune it out and act like it didn't happen, and like the neglect of so many people. And then like this man who has brought this woman when he's already married on this vacation, and then just treats her like she's nothing, like acts like she shouldn't even exist, and that solely because she spoke out about being taken advantage of, that he's causing her some sort of problem. And I think this movie is so indicative of the flaws of so many men in this world and how they feel superior to women for some reason. And I think that there's so many incredible messages about women and the power of women. And I love Jen's character in this because she's a badass. There's so many incredible moments where she has to utilize her intellect to survive. But what I really like about it too is she's a real person. Like, she's not necessarily ready and equipped for every moment in this, but she has to utilize her will to survive, to continue to keep going. And she screws up in moments. And I think that's what I like. It's like, it's very grounded in reality. She doesn't just become a superhero. There are flaws along the way. There are moments that she almost dies. And I think that's what, similar to Jeremy Saulnier's Blue Ruin, when you make like revenge movies and you just put a person in that situation, it's the best way to go about it, to showcase fumbles, just to show them be a badass superhero. It doesn't necessarily work. Another great example is You're Next, but you get a little bit more with that character being a survivalist, so she has a little bit more prior knowledge, but she still struggles along the way. And I think that that's what's important, showcasing those struggles and getting you to the finish line. And there's some great violence in this movie, some really incredible practical effects, and it just works really well as a whole. It's a really incredible experience, and I always think about this movie long after I watch it. And I think that's really promising of Coralie as a director in the future. And if you've never seen this movie, please watch it. It is phenomenal. So have you seen Revenge? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought. I think this movie is incredible, and it is hands down my favorite thing I've watched in Neon's catalog thus far. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.